This is my journey. Inspired one story at a time, a library of leaders was created. It began as a journey to learn. As time went on, it began to grow. All it needed was a platform, and this podcast was created to listen, to inspire, to share. I am a storyteller, and this is my journey. Welcome to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. I'm your host, Steve Anderson, and today our guest is John Tarnoff, who is an executive and career transition coach, speaker, and author who helps mid-career professionals land better jobs, building more meaningful and sustainable careers. Fired 39% of his time during his 35 years as a film producer, studio executive, and tech entrepreneur, he learned how to turn setbacks into successes in a volatile business. He reinvented his own career at 50, earning a master's degree in counseling psychology to share his career lessons with others going through similar challenges. Since leaving entertainment in 2010, John has built a global career coaching practice serving both individuals one-to-one and in groups. He has also led career workshops for MBA alumni in career transition, including the UCLA's Anderson School of Management and Cornell's SC Johnson College of Business. Corporate coaching clients have included Bank of America, Bridgewater Associates, Levi Strauss, SoftBank, TD Ameritrade, Eastman, and Thrive Global. His proprietary 3 elements career building framework empowers clients to define their niche value, build a referral community, and use thought leadership to enhance their professional brand and attract the right career opportunities. Learning this framework empowers clients to never have to search for a job again. John is a TEDx speaker and the author of the best-selling book, Boomer Reinvention: How to Create Your Dream Career Over 50. His 4 LinkedIn learning courses have reached over 200,000 learners and have been translated into 9 languages. John, welcome to the program. It's great to have you on today.
Thank you, Steve. I'm really pleased to be here.
Well, you know, it's you've written this book that's been in print for quite a while now, but it's called The Boomer Reinvention: How to Create Your Dream Career Over 50. And the title intrigued me, and I think it has some real good things we can learn from. So why don't you just start by giving us a little context of your career? And
Right.
I note that you say that you've been fired 39% of the time that you've been employed.
That's right.
So let's kind of hear what industry you're in, what happened during those times, and what you've done since.
Absolutely. So I've been career coaching now since about 2012, and the inciting incident around the career coaching practice was a TEDx talk that I was asked to deliver on the topic of transformation. So the backstory there is that for the prior 30, 35 years, I had been an entertainment industry executive, film producer with a sabbatical into technology in the 90s during the bubble, had a small startup with a partner, raised a lot of money, had some high profile clients, and then washed out in 2001 when everyone else washed out. So you had alluded to the 39%, fired 39% of the time, which is something that I talked about in this TEDx talk. And initially when they approached me, I said, "Oh, do you want me to talk about transformation that's been taking place in entertainment? All of the technology, all of the streaming services, all of those disruptions to the traditional entertainment model." And they said, "Look, that's fine, but you can talk about whatever you want." And I had been reading about at that time, so this is 2012, how so many boomers and older Gen Xers were having a hard time recovering from the 2008, 2009 recession. And we're looking at a loss of 30 to 50% of their retirement savings, 30 to 50% loss of the value of their homes, and thinking, "Oh my God, I can't afford to retire, certainly not on schedule. So I need to keep working, but then they get out into the job market and they realize there's ageism and
Yeah.
there's a mindset that says, oh, you need to be gone at 60, 65. God forbid you should still be working at 70. Get lost. And there's a realization, I think, that certainly happened to me at that time and a lot of people in that situation. And this has now become much more mainstream as we're in the 2020s, particularly post-pandemic, that we're in a very, very different career trajectory. And that we're all, at every generation, going to need to be working longer, saving longer, and enjoying our eventual retirement a good deal later than we had initially anticipated, or that the economy, the society, the culture has prepared us for. So that really was the inception of the coaching practice, to realize that people in kind of my stage of career, mid-career, late career, were hitting this wall and needed some help to burst through it and to figure out how to sustain their careers in this new environment against these headwinds that have been and are continuing to push people back and really threaten their very existence.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's what led me into it.
Yeah, and it's weird. You're talking to a guy who went the much more traditional route. So I worked for one company my entire career,
Ah,
37 years.
right, right.
And so as I always
Don't
tell my
see that.
kids,
Yeah,
there's two things I can't really help you with. One is how to find a job because I've never found one since I was in my 20s. And secondly, how to date because I've been married to the same woman for 46
right,
years.
right.
So those are two things I'm not an expert on. And so I
Yep,
was intrigued to think about this topic today, and not only about retirement, but also I think, when people, get into their mid careers and they've been doing it for a while, and maybe they're bored of it or burnt out or tired or whatever, it's hard to get out of what you prepared for and done for so long. So I think the principles would be the same. Um, but I think it's just interesting to, in the book, you talk a lot about how you need to know, what your gifts are, what you're good at, what you want to do, and then there's a process to go through to kind of say, this is something that I can do, and then be willing to take the risk to do it. And those are
yeah,
all big hurdles.
yeah. There are two guiding principles in the book, and principles that I also apply in my career coaching practice. There are two really guiding principles in the book that are relevant here. The first one is that the career you want is already inside you. I believe that there's a level of inner knowing that we all have, which has a pretty good 360 view about who we are, what we can do, what we want to do, what's going to really float our boat. So the process of finding that place, that role for us, starts on the inside. We're in a culture, business culture and otherwise, that really focuses on the external, where we spend so much time living in this kind of fear of missing out world, this FOMO world of chasing that latest, greatest thing, that whatever that trend is, or adopting that best practice that we've read about, or following some prescription in a Forbes article, or whatever that reference might be. And I think it is potentially damaging, but certainly can be a kind of a fruitless, quixotic exercise to try to start this process by focusing on the outside. And a lot of people come to me and they say, I need to make X amount of money a year. I need this kind of certain position. I've been a director level or VP level all my life. I'm not going back. And I say to them, so explain this really. What are you getting out of all of that? And they have a hard time articulating what the real value is for them, other than what that external recognition and validation is about. So I would say to anyone in this life stage, remember that the first step is to look inside.
Yeah.
But then the second guiding principle for the book and in my practice is this idea that in order to create the future, you have to reconcile the past. We have all at this stage in life acquired a little bit of baggage, right? Whether it
Yeah.
is a job that we were fired from or relationships, bridges that we've burned, deals that we missed, things that we regret. It's normal for us to accumulate disappointments. Things didn't go our way. And if we're harboring a sense of shame or guilt or anger or whatever negative sentiment we might have about our past failings, it's really important to forgive the situation, forgive ourselves, forgive the other people involved, chalk it up to lessons learned, and move on. Because if we don't, we're going to carry the baggage into every meeting that we have, every job interview, every client interview, if you're out raising money, whatever it might be that you're going out for. If you don't have a really clear sense of acceptance around who you are, what you stand for, what you want, other people are going to notice, and they're going to say, Steve's a perfectly good guy. I had a great meeting with him, but there's something can't quite put my finger on it. I'm going to pass.
Yeah, yeah. No, I can see that. I think that, and then looking at your career as well, going into the entertainment business and being an executive in the entertainment companies, that in itself is probably a bit of a short-term because there's change all the time in that industry, right? And so
Absolutely.
I know that you went through, had kind of what you thought was the dream job, and this is so great and whatever, and then all of a sudden they don't need you anymore.
Right.
So
Well, I like to say I had a succession of dream jobs, right?
yeah,
So, yeah, I mean, the funny thing about entertainment is that volatility is baked into that world because, you're chasing the changing tastes of the American and the global public, and it's hard to figure that out, and you never quite know what works and what doesn't work, and very often some of the slam dunk projects that I worked on that everyone thought, oh, this is going to be such a big hit, was a dog. And then there were these quirky little projects where you thought, I don't really quite understand it. It seems strange. It's this filmmaker's vision, and I don't know, maybe it's going to work. And sure enough, it did, right? And no
yeah.
one was able to predict it. So it's a crazy business. What I have observed is that, in a strange way, because of the advent of digital technology, the rest of the world has become like entertainment, where you just don't know from one minute to the next what's going to happen, who's going to come in, who's going to take over, what's going to work, what's not going to work. We look at the top technology companies, and we forget that there were all of these other also ran companies that were sprinkled around the space, and it's Facebook that emerged. No one remembers MySpace or Friendster or any of these other social networks, right? So we have to remember that there's a lot of bodies littered around in the business world, and so we have to live with this uncertainty of disruption, of startups that don't last, and again, rely on that inner knowing, that inner sense of what we can do, what our value proposition is, how it applies. And really, we have to be, each of us, a business of one.
Yeah, yeah, it's just really interesting because as you said, especially the baby boomer generation and, us having biases that you work to 60 or 65 and then you retire and you have a pension and you do all that just isn't there anymore on a regular basis or on a
Right.
common basis. So we need to work longer to live longer. And then from my perspective as a physical therapist, I also see that from a mobility perspective, we may need to be able to be healthier and
Absolutely.
move longer.
Absolutely.
And so those are two things that I think are really worth thinking about, as we age, because as we look at our parents when they felt pain or were unable to do something, they just sat in the chair and didn't do much about it. And so
Yeah.
I think these are both related in a lot of ways. So kind of reinventing, yourself, I think is as you describe in the book, I think is really interesting, and something that should not just be taken happenstance, like whatever happened happens. And you say in the book, and it's a real process that you need to really study and understand. Like, we said earlier, know thyself first, and then figure out how you can contribute to the world in a purposeful way.
Yeah, I think that proactivity is so important. Um, the biggest threats I think we have in being able to sustain careers, uh, strangely, are our longevity. It's a big challenge to be able to live longer. And as you were
Yeah,
saying before, as a physical therapist, as a clinician in this space, we're living longer. It doesn't mean that we're going to live healthy. We have to take better care of ourselves because we have more time, and that is a challenge for a lot of people. It's a
yeah,
different way of living for many people to eat better, to exercise more regularly. Uh, I have one of my college roommates was on a family trip and figured out of nowhere that he was having a hell of a time getting in and out of the canoe on the dock, on the lake where they were. And
yeah,
his balance was shot, 70 years old. And it was a big wake up call for him that he needed to work on his core strength and he needed to work on his balance because these things are going. And otherwise, he's in perfect health. So, all of these realizations of what we need to do to kind of keep going and keep going in a way that really honors all of the capability that we continue to have and will continue to have for many years. Um, it's important to build this foundation of doing so that we can achieve what we want to achieve. And,
yeah,
the other factor that I think is important to tackle is inertia. This idea that, well, if it's been going on in this way all this time, it's just going to keep going. Well, it's not.
yeah, yeah,
And we certainly see that in careers. People who are 45 to 55 are meeting this head on in today's business economy, where all of a sudden they're finding their positions are eliminated, whether it is, usually it's not personal, it's about a corporate reorg of some kind, but they're feeling the sting of it because in many ways the bias is hitting them first, the age bias.
yeah.
And while companies are very adept at circumventing the legalities of getting rid of older employees, which they're not supposed to do, they can figure out ways of, getting by. And the courts
Yeah.
are siding with businesses over individuals. It's really hard to prove age discrimination, even though
Well,
there's
yeah.
a lot of filings, right?
And in one of your case studies in the book, I thought it was interesting when you said that the one person was being let go in his 60s, but they camouflaged it by letting a 28-year-old woman go at the
Sure.
same time,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that they couldn't come back and say, "Oh, well, it's not age discrimination because look, we let this 28-year-old go as
Sure.
well."
Yeah.
Which, boy, that must have been hard on her to be the sacrificial lamb for
Right.
that one.
Right.
So,
Well,
yeah,
they're good at this. They're good at timing these firings and evading the the law around this. But nonetheless, it's going to happen. So we have to be prepared for it, and we have to be more proactive and not assume that we're going to be able to continue to work the way we've worked uh, in the role at the company for the salary. And so part of that proactivity gets back to this idea of reinvention, as you were saying, and really doing the self reflection around what I call the superpower, the idea of what are your top skills, abilities, experiences, preferences, values that all go into the work that you do and the results that you deliver.
yeah,
And the goal for, I think, everyone at this stage of the career is to be really clear on what that superpower is, because you are going to be asked about it. You're going to be challenged about it. And when you are in a situation, not if, but when you are in a situation where you're going to have to pivot to another job, another phase of your career, you want to be able to dine out on that superpower and differentiate yourself from everyone else in the job market and network your way to people who get your value, understand what you deliver, and need it for their company.
And all that combined with the fact as we age, I think we become a little more risk adverse, which that's scary. That's taking a risk, going out there at that stage of your career to do that. So
Yeah,
there's got to be a conscious effort to
yeah,
recognize that and
yeah.
step forward.
It's funny that you say that, because I think you're right. I think traditionally people get more risk averse as they get older. I'm trying to look at it the opposite way, because think about it this way. We've made it this far. We've made it through all of these life stages of starting a career, maybe, starting a family, buying a house, maybe. We may have done some, we've traveled, maybe we've done a lot. We've learned a lot, learned how to do a lot of things. So that set of experiences should prepare us to be more resilient and better risk takers, because we know how to manage those risks today. And I think that, I notice this in myself. And I think a lot of this has to do with aging, reaction time, just the sense of mortality creeping up. These are significant effects of aging. But at the same time, I think we kind of have less to lose in a certain way, right? Because if we've gotten to this point, uh, let's say we've been in a career, let's say we've uh, raised a family, we've made our mortgage payments, the house may be paid off, close to being paid off, the kids are hopefully out of the house, right?
All
Uh,
right.
we at this stage, hopefully, if our parents are still living, hopefully they're okay. Although we know a lot of people who are sandwiched between caring for parents and caring for kids. So I don't want to minimize that, but just to make a point here about the fact that we are better prepared to take on risks at this stage in our lives than at any time up to now.
Yeah.
Something that
Good
we need
point.
to consider. And if you study the stats on older business owners, the Kauffman Foundation in Kansas City publishes an annual entrepreneurship report.
Hmm.
And consistently, what Kauffman finds is that the older entrepreneurs are more successful than the younger entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think you said in the book like they two-thirds higher success rate
Yeah,
in the older
yeah,
group than the younger
right,
group. So yeah,
right.
that's really interesting.
So I think the key is to know what you want, right? Know your
Yeah.
superpower, know what you're good at, know what you don't want to do, and focus on those things that are uh, resonant for you and that kind of fit into your vision about how you want to live your life.
And you yourself, I think after the age of 50, went back to school to get a master's in spiritual psychology. So
Yes.
how did that explain, did that help you see some of these things and look at it from a different perspective? And that's not an easy thing to do to go back to school at that age either.
It was really interesting. That happened right after my startup blew up in 2001, and I was kind of picking up the pieces of that company with my partner, and realized that I needed to do something different. That I was not going to go back to the entertainment business in the way that I had before. I wasn't even sure if I was going to go back to entertainment. I really had no idea, and I was in this liminal space between what I had done and where I was going, and I knew some people who had been through this program, and the program is really founded on a principle of total self-responsibility, very kind of stoic philosophy underpinning to this program. And the idea that you're your attitude about the issue is the issue. So it really is about how you are willing to frame yourself, reframe yourself, approach the world from a growth mindset, beginner's mind, and really from a position of self-responsibility, make your next steps forward. And it affects communication, it affects business, it affects all personal relationships. And it gave me a foundation with which to kind of reintroduce myself into job interviews and to exploring job possibilities from a fresh mindset. And I think it must have worked because within 6 months of starting that graduate program, I landed this amazing job at DreamWorks Animation, which
Yeah.
and the job was not listed. And initially, when a friend of mine who was there uh, kind of raised the possibility, and we were having dinner, and he said, "Would you ever think about coming over to work with us?" And I said, "Are you kidding? I mean, my company just went belly up. I need a job." And I
Yeah.
said, are there any open positions? And he said, "Well, no." I said, "Well, why did you bring it up?" And he said, "Well, because I just think you'd be great there." And I said, "Well, great. Thanks a lot." And he said, "No, let me introduce you to some people there." And that became the process. And I went through this kind of 6 month spanking machine there where I started meeting people, and they said, "Well, you should meet this other person." And I must have met a dozen people there over the course of 6 months. And what I realized in retrospect is that they were picking up on certain things that I was saying, certain questions that I was asking. And when I joined the company, everything that I had been asking about in terms of how they were building the company for the future, what their company culture was like, what did they value, all of those things were the initiatives that I wound up starting and running for them.
Yeah.
So I kind of programmed this what if situation. Now, it's not going to work for everyone like this. I'm just saying this is a great example of how you kind of put a certain amount of intention to work, and you can kind of create an opportunity for yourself by zeroing in on, again, your superpower, what you do best, where you move the needle, what your values are, how you like to work. Um, and they came back to me and they said, "Well, we're gonna create a job for you." And uh, they actually had some different departments who were kind of vying for where to put me. Right? Did they want me under
Yeah.
technology? Do they want me under production? Do they want me under development? And I kind of charted an independent course there for 6 years. And when it was over, and I knew it before they knew it. But I knew that
Yeah.
what I had come there to do was done. They were changing direction. It was after the recession, and they were going off in a much more kind of a corporate, uh, you know, manufacturing mindset. And I was a new builder kind of a guy. And I essentially fired myself from that job. I went to the COO to whom I report, and I said to her, "Look, this is a strange question, but is there anything left for me to do around here?" And she turned bright red, and she said, "Look, before I answer that question," she said, "I just have to say you've been great. We love you. You've done a great job here. But having said all that, probably not."
Yeah. Yeah.
And so and they were great to me. And I really regretted leaving the company. It was a great place to work, great campus right near me in Glendale, California here. And but it was time to go. It was time to go, and it was time
Yeah.
to do what eventually became this coaching practice.
And maybe out of necessity, but you kind of became an expert at resilience because again, there's the stigma of, when you tell friends and family and other people well, you're changing jobs again, so to speak. And there's that
Right.
kind of old world stigma that, oh,
Yeah.
you must have screwed up or
Yeah.
you
Oh,
didn't, it's
yeah.
that's got to be.
Yeah, my mom used to say this to me all the time. She would say, "Why can't you hold on to a job?" I say, "Mom, it's Hollywood. You
Yeah.
gotta make some allowances for that." And she would say, "Well, I know, but I just
Yeah.
wish that you could just stay someplace for a good amount of time." And anyway, that's the way it
Well, let's
goes.
let's stay on the psychology part of it a little bit. And
Yeah,
there's
sure.
two things that I want to ask you about was, and I believe this too, that I think the word curiosity, being curious, is such an important thing. And then you also state in the book too, which talked to me because of my science background, is that,
Mm,
the neuroplasticity in our brain
right.
continues on even as we age. So,
Yes.
realizing that you might have new tricks and new ideas and new curiosities even in
Right.
your later life is something that you need to grasp onto, embrace.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's I think one of the great revelations of neuroscience over the last 20 years, this idea that uh, you can teach old dogs new tricks. And
Yeah.
uh, which is I laugh because it's an inherently ageist concept. But yeah, I mean the brain is as you say, eternally plastic. And this goes back to what you were saying about being risk averse, because I think I think that's a limiting belief that we hold on
Mhm.
to, this idea that, oh, when we get older we're risk averse. Um, Not necessarily, right? Because if you pair the neuroplasticity with the life experience and the understanding of how to manage risks, then we should be much more risk uh, friendly than we are portrayed to be, and that we perhaps portray to ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, that's really really important piece. Define GIST thinking.
Yes. So this is another neuroscience uh, idea, and so the practical experience of this for all of you on this podcast. You're in a meeting. There are a bunch of others in the meeting, perhaps probably younger than you, and you're debating a problem and looking for a solution. And you're listening to this conversation going back and forth, and it's obvious to you what the solution is. And you just blurt it out. The meeting stops. Everyone looks at you, and someone says, "How did you figure that out?" And to you, it's obvious. And you say, well, I don't know, it just seemed like an obvious thing to me, or I've been in these situations before, or whatever it is. But that's just thinking. Your ability, because of the way your neural pathways have been developed over the years, for you to instantly access the solution to the problem because you've been there and you've done that. So that is part of the advantage of age and neuroplasticity and being able to retrieve and compute important, valuable answers to questions intuitively, because it's just part of your makeup.
And could we define that as wisdom? Would you call that wisdom, or is it
I
different?
think I think there's a difference. I think wisdom is it's a different quadrant. Um, just thinking is the ability to access, retrieve the information, um, and to make those quick, perhaps transactional would be a word of characterizing it, connections between problem solution. Wisdom, I think, is a couple of steps back from that. I think wisdom is more about uh, acceptance. It is more about being. It's a set of solutions from a different angle.
Okay. Okay. And I think also you say in the book too that you make the argument that as we age and as we get experience, we also often grow more empathy. As we age, and so that's something
Hopefully,
that can,
yes.
yeah, that can be very valuable in business and decisions and working with teams and so on.
Yeah, I mean, I think empathy at every age is critical. And hopefully, as we age and as we experience life from different angles, and as we experience the ups and downs of life, the injustices that are
Hmm.
around us, as well as the rewards, then we have a greater sense of the richness of life's experience and our willingness, hopefully, to accept the experience of others um, through our own humiliation and humility, gives us a greater sense of acceptance and empathy for others.
Yeah, which, I'm a huge believer in mindsets, and I think that, having that mindset, and I think you make the statement that the second half of life isn't about reduction. It's really about expansion. And so to have
Right.
a mindset with that of, I'm not winding down, I'm not becoming more narrow, whatever. I continue to look for expansion and
Yep.
growth. And that comes back to the curiosity and the lifelong learning
Yeah.
and things like that.
There's a parable that I talk about in the book, which I'm sure you 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 went through, which is based on a Jungian idea. And the parable is this: that if you look at yourself as a sundial, and you are in the morning of your life, you're casting a shadow, and you're watching that shadow as the sun approaches midday. That shadow shrinks. That shadow goes from being a long shadow in the early morning to no shadow at all when the sun is overhead in the middle of the day. And if that's an analogy for life, in midlife, you cast no shadow. You no longer cast a shadow that is the reference point for your identity. And that carries with it, understandably, some anxiety if you have no reference point any longer for who you are.
Yeah.
But in the afternoon of your life, you're going to begin to cast the shadow again, except that it's going in a different direction. So, in the second half of your life, if you are looking to recapture your reference point, your shadow, where it used to be, you're going to be in trouble because it's never going to be back there. But it will lengthen in a new direction. And the opportunity, the challenge, perhaps for some, but the opportunity for all, is to pivot to the direction in which the shadow is lengthening. And again, the life being not about reduction, but about expansion, that shadow expands. And the longer you're alive before you get to sunset, that shadow is long and rich and full of reference for this new life that you are creating for yourself in your second half.
Yeah, absolutely. In the book too, you go into the middle of the book and you call that part two, as you have case studies and you identify a lot of people and kind of tell their story. And when you put that in the book and you think of those people, what's the common theme or the common trend that you see in those people that enabled them to find that new beginning later in their life?
I think it all comes down to persistence. And I think each one of them, in their own way, was persistent, didn't give up. And they were also opportunistic, in the sense that they needed to make a change and they took advantage of the hand that they had been dealt, and they did the best they could with that hand. They didn't hang up, their they didn't give up. They didn't retreat. They didn't settle. They kept going, and they were able to find this new energy, this new vision, and learned a lot in the process. And I mean, each one of those 7 case studies, I think, is unique in their own way. But I'm just thinking about a woman named Julie Murphy, who was a corporate lawyer and working for a series of toxic corporations, and developed a meditation and mindfulness practice to kind of survive her job. And it was very stressful for her, and she was going a lot to retreats and yoga retreats and mindfulness retreats, and learning lots of different techniques as a coping mechanism. Uh, but at one point, I think someone said to her, you could do this for a living. You could become a
Yeah.
mindfulness coach. You could take this knowledge that you have learned and turn it around and make this your career. And it was a big wake up call for her. And this is exactly what she did. And she formulated a plan, and there's certain timing she needed for her daughter to go off to college. But when she was ready and she had done the homework, she flipped that switch. So that, to me, was an example of kind of someone waking up to a new possibility, the idea that, oh, I could change my whole life around this. Many other people might have said, oh no, I could never do that. I'm stuck. I'm just going to do this and I'm just going to hang in as long as I can. And no, that's too scary. Back to the idea of being risk averse. But
Yeah.
I think she exemplified, and some of the other people that I talk about exemplify this idea of, okay, well, there's a plan here. I need to figure out what that plan is because, eye on the prize, if I could possibly, conceivably engineer a life and a lifestyle that is more healthful, where I'm giving back to people. I'm really moving the needle. I'm not only curing myself, but I'm curing others in the process out of kind of corporate toxicity. That might be worth doing.
Yeah. Well, in your own experience, I mean, you are a career coach now. Is that
Yeah,
how would you
absolutely.
identify yourself? And
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
with all your experience and successes and pitfalls and resilience and all the kind of things we've talked about, now you help people kind of mine through that. And so, tell us a little bit about what you do and what your typical client would be right now.
Sure. Well, thank you for the segue. That was great. So yes, so I am a career transition coach focusing primarily on mid-career professionals, so people in the 45 to 55-year-old range and beyond who are facing this challenge of looking at themselves differently, sustaining their careers, recovering from job loss and the instability of corporate America today, and becoming more resilient and self-sufficient in the process. And we are experiencing, I think, in business, in careers, a continual erosion of the traditional, certainly the 40-year career, but the general erosion of job tenure across the board. So the average job tenure today is 3 to 5 years. For younger professionals, Gen Z entering the workforce, it's probably going to be 2 to 3 years.
Wow. Wow.
So some of that has to do with the fact that skills requirements are changing, job requirements, the fit is changing. And of course, all you have to do is like open the screen and look at what's going on in corporate America. You're seeing all of these layoffs and massive shifts as the global economy is adjusting to continual technology disruption. AI, of course, now, the next shoe to drop.
Right.
So against that environment, we all have to be more resilient. Younger generations are entering the workforce understanding that they need to be that resilient. Older generations are kind of catching up to this. And again, with ageism in the workplace, wondering about, well, how am I going to survive, right? How am I going to keep working? I'm being marginalized. I'm being compared to and put up against people who are 10, 20 years younger than I am. How do I survive that? And for me, it becomes a question back to this idea of the superpower, understanding who you are, what you do well, what you like to do, what you've been successful at, what your target market needs, the companies that you could work for, the businesses that you could support, and how much you need to earn, right? What does that look like for you? So to kind of create an equation around your capacity and your capability, and then articulate that value proposition. And the best place to do that is on LinkedIn. Your resume is no longer the way you get a job. And I keep repeating this until I'm blue in the face. If you are submitting resumes to open job positions, whether you find them on LinkedIn or on Indeed or Monster or any other job board, it is a fool's errand. For the most part, you will get ghosted. You may get a rejection letter. Miraculously, you may get invited to an interview. But for the most part, it's not going to work because you're not who they want to hire. If you're in the job market, if you're looking at job postings, I challenge you to find a job posting that is looking for 15 years experience, 20 years experience, 25 years experience. It does not exist. At the most, you're going to see a job that's looking for 7 to 10 years experience. You may find a job posting that's looking for 12 to 15 years experience. I haven't seen one.
Mhm.
But in any event, it's going to be less than what you've got. So what do you do, right? This makes you, in the minds of most hiring managers and recruiters, overqualified for the job that you're applying to. And that is a big red flag. They think that you are doing this out of desperation, that you are using this as a stepping stone, that you're going to get bored, that you're a flight risk, all sorts of reasons why they're going to reject you for that position.
So then what do? You
Right,
have a great profile on LinkedIn.
right.
And so, I would assume that most high-level jobs are by referral and people you know and things like that. But
Exactly.
so how do
Exactly.
you get there?
So this is called the hidden job market. It is where 80% of hiring actually takes place, and it is all by referral. So instead of applying to jobs, what you need to do is network the hell out of it. And I would say even more than networking per se is the idea of building a community around you, a community of shared interest. So chances are you have, if you're on LinkedIn, you've got 500 plus contacts on LinkedIn. Most people who've been around for a while, who've been on the platform for a while, have 500 contacts, 300 to 500 contacts or more. And not every one of those people is someone that you actually know in person. You may have never had a conversation with any of these people. Many of them you will have had conversations with. These are longstanding colleagues you've known for years. Maybe you have had them on your LinkedIn for 10 years or more. You may not even know what they're doing today. So now that you have a profile that articulately expresses the value that you deliver, not just your resume, which is your experience section, with a list of your past positions, but really through your about section posits a mission statement about what motivates you. Who are you? Why do you do what you do? Where are you going with this? You want to start conversations and you want to bring people from your network into this smaller community of shared interest that is going to be your marketing hub. It's going to be where you rely on people to make introductions for you, to share information with you. And by the way, it goes both ways. You want to support your community just as much as you want your community to support you. And whether it is on LinkedIn, other professional organizations, other sites that might be relevant to the work that you do, you want to keep your name out there and keep engaged and be proactive about supporting your community in the work that you want to do, that they're doing, that's going on in the world. And this leads to the third element in my 3 elements framework, which is to become a thought leader. A thought leader is an experienced expert in their field who is sharing their wisdom, sharing their best practices, and leading a conversation around how to improve their industry, improve the world, and engaging with other thought leaders and colleagues around these issues. And being a thought leader helps solve this age-old networking problem, which is, okay, I got all of these names. I've got all these business cards that I've accumulated, people I've known for years. I need a job. What am I supposed to do? Call them every 2 weeks and go, hey, have you heard of anything? I mean, that's the most annoying thing
Yeah,
imaginable, right? Nobody
right.
wants to get that call. So thought leadership helps solve that problem because what you're doing in thought leadership is whether you're curating articles on LinkedIn or simply looking around for interesting posts that you can comment on, uh, uh, making your own posts about issues that are important to you, uh, or getting out into the world, professional organizations, events, teaching, mentoring, any activity that's going to give you the opportunity to share the experience and the insight that you bring to the work that you do because of the decades that you've been doing it.
Mhm.
And getting into those conversations with people is going to get you into informational interviews, other conversations with people. And little by little, you're building up this active community of people who are all traveling in the same direction professionally and where opportunities are popping up. And the more you connect with people, the more you connect with friends of friends. So on LinkedIn would be your second level connections. And you can, if you have a LinkedIn paid plan, which is very well worth the $30 a month, it gives you the opportunity to see beyond your initial group and see the friends of friends. You can start browsing through those connections and see who you want to connect with and be proactive about making those connections, getting into those conversations. Not all of them are going to be successful. Not all of them are going to lead somewhere else. But if batting 300 in baseball makes you a slugger, that's 3 out of 10, right? That's you're getting on base 3 out of 10 times. It's only
Mhm.
30%. If you can do the same thing in your networking, you're doing fine.
So it sounds like you would even recommend just taking time on a daily basis to kind of
Absolutely.
work that system.
Daily basis, weekly basis, have this as part of your routine
Yeah.
because this is a
Mm.
practice that's going to really stand you in good stead for the rest of your career.
And the other thing I noticed in the book too that you said that kind of resonated with me is don't try and think of the dream job and go after that. I think you stated follow your usefulness.
Yes. Yeah. So this was this comes from a graduation address that was delivered at Columbia a few years ago, and the speaker, who was a venture capitalist, said, "So you've all been now. Of course, this is for graduates, right? So typically this upbeat, follow your bliss kind of speech, and this guy kind of goes square at this idea of follow your bliss. He said, if follow your bliss and the money will follow were a prescription for success, then every contestant on American Idol would be a zillionaire.
Yeah.
And he said, that just doesn't work. But instead of following your bliss, follow your usefulness. Figure out what it is that you do that can really move the needle for someone and understand that value proposition, articulate that value proposition, pitch that value proposition. Sooner or later, people are going to go, yeah, I need that. And you've explained this succinctly and persuasively, and I see from your background that you can deliver it. Let's get to work. And what you will find is that ultimately your usefulness can be your bliss, can be your passion.
Yeah.
Because, back to empathy again, the idea that if you're actually helping someone achieve a positive result, profitable result, that makes you feel good, right? So why would you not want to do that some more and be useful
Mhm.
to other people?
And I think one thing that I tell younger professionals too is that, and I use my own experience. I mean, I could have never imagined, never entered my mind that when I started my career that I could be the CEO of this, fairly big company.
Right, right.
And so that I could never vision that. So it's like you can't vision a job and then go after it. You just have to take steps forward and embrace opportunities and try something new. And through that process, you eventually, create something that you couldn't even hardly think of, in the early
Absolutely.
days. So,
Absolutely. You never
yeah,
know. And I think that that really is the most important lesson for all of us is to have this open mind and to have this growth mindset, which says, uh, I may have a particular idea about where I want to go, and that's fine. Uh, don't stop believing, but
yeah,
at the same time, be open to new directions that may open up for you and be willing to open your mind, because if you open your mind, you're going to start to see things that you didn't see before. And who
yeah.
knows,
It's
might
rarely
be
a
might be
linear
better.
straight line.
That's
It's
right.
a crooked line to success for sure.
You bet.
Well, John, in anticipation of our discussion today, is there anything I haven't asked you or anything that you want to be sure and get into the program today?
No, I think we covered all the top points. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this stuff, and it's a really sensitive time for a lot of people, and it's confusing for a lot of people. And I think we all need to to remember that there's a lot of support out there for us, and that our relationships are really important um, resources for us to tap into, particularly in this career space.
Yeah, and you said a word that when I talk often on leadership, I always say relationships, relationships, relationships.
Yeah,
It's really the key.
that's right.
John, at this point in the interview, I always ask my guests the same common question. So that question is, in relation to leadership, what is a pearl of wisdom that you could leave us with today?
Well, it's not original, but I think that the essence of leadership is listening, and I think that the leadership model, to me, that is the most resonant for our times is the idea of servant leadership and leading from behind. And I think if we think of leadership as being a shepherd with a flock, as opposed to uh, kind of an advanced man or a soldier with a brandishing a sword and leading the charge into the jungle. Uh, I think we do a better job of uh, creating success, because we need everyone to be engaged, included, participating in the effort moving forward. And when we're servant leaders leading from behind, we have the opportunity to work with people, to see how they're doing, to to help them stay on the track, or to pick up their pace, or to solve their problems. And uh, it's not about us. It's really about the team. It's about supporting them, because it takes a village. It takes a team to move forward today in conquering, solving the problems that we all have to
Well
address.
said. Yeah, yes, well said. Well, again, I'm just going to hold up for those watching this on video, the book here. It's a good book. It's been in print for a while. And if I can just ask, maybe put you on the spot, if that's okay.
Sure.
So, when we're looking at, careers in different ways, a lot of people do write books. Do you make money writing a book like that? Have you made money on your book?
Yeah, I'm still getting virtual checks from Amazon on it, and which is great. I was not expecting it to continue to make money. Uh, I did it because it was an opportunity for me to kind of organize my thoughts around what it was that I was doing and what the coaching practice was about. So I needed to kind of create this system for myself. And I also wanted to do the research into exploring how other people at this age stage were handling their own career transitions and reinventions. So it was a big kind of a research project for me, and it helped get me on the map as a coach. I was very fortunate to be able to launch the book on CBS This Morning. And I think they kind of picked up on the idea that this was a thing, that this
Yeah.
mid-career reinvention thing was important. And so it's been an opportunity for me to meet more people, work with more people, and spread the word about how reinvention and career pivots are possible at any age, and that there is light at the end of the tunnel. It is not an oncoming train.
Yeah, well, it is a thing, that's for sure. And I think that, if variety is the spice of life, you've had a lot of variety in your career and done a lot of amazing things. So it's been fun to read the book and research you a little bit and find out what you're doing and having this great discussion today. So I appreciate your time, and I've learned a lot, and I hope our listeners do as well.
It's been a pleasure, Steve. Thanks so much for having me on.
Okay, well, take care and have a good rest of your day, and maybe we'll see you down the road. Thank you for listening to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. To listen to all my interviews, subscribe to Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, and many other popular podcast platforms. Some of these interviews are on video, and you can search YouTube for Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson. You can also access the entire library of interviews on my website, orange.coaching.com, and that is orangetheword.coaching.com, and go to the Media Center and click on Podcasts or Video Gallery. You can also enter the website from pilpodcast.com.